my gosh, we're live, guys.
Hey.
Are we on? Okay, here's our filter, so we look pretty.
Oh,
I'm gonna leave you two
good.
on
Woo.
camera.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
So is this like Hollywood? Don't look at the camera.
No, you can totally break the fourth wall.
Okay.
Fourth wall.
The
Is that-
fourth wall. Oh,
Okay.
my goodness.
Everyone in there, let me know if you can hear us. Send some thumbs up if you can hear us. 2 people in the live, so wave or send something if you can hear us. Oh, let me
One,
bring the
2,
microphone.
3,
We have a
testing.
microphone.
Hey,
It's a
look
fancy
at that.
Yeah, okay, hold it.
Wow. I wasn't prepared for this level of fancy. I don't know about you.
You're used to microphones.
No, I'm not. Am
You have
I?
a vocal performance degree.
Oh, I forgot
Oh, yeah,
about
guys.
that.
She's actually an opera singer.
Well, that's extreme.
Give them the viewers a little taste.
No,
Yeah,
you
we
were
should start like while we wait for people to get in, jump in. They should listen to your beautiful voice.
no, y'all guys.
There's one person watching.
I came here to talk, not to sing.
So is the microphone like you got to keep it real close, or is it kind of a general?
Just here's fine, like
Okay.
comfortable
Can it get
distance.
everybody?
It
If
does,
one
but
person-
it's better for the audience to not be like.
Okay. Like what she's doing.
Yeah.
Right now.
Like what?
Yeah,
This is
kind of
probably the
like yeah.
Okay, I'll stop.
It's like right now your voice is gonna be much louder. Mine and Chad's and Shane's is gonna be like.
Is it directional? Like,
I
or does
have
it pick
no
up everything?
idea.
Okay.
I am such a dummy for those things. Technology.
Well, I feel fancy,
Yeah.
and that's what matters.
Yeah. Okay. Babe, you wanna say hi?
Hi, I'm here too.
That's my husband, y'all. But I'm gonna leave Melody and Chad more in the middle. There you go.
Just, you know,
There we
I
go.
don't want to leave you out.
Yeah. There's no one now. We're so famous. Oh my gosh. And the dog. That's okay. Okay, guys. Welcome. This is the Brazilian Talk Show. I am Jessica Everso. This is
Melody Hurd or
and-
or Seal. I mean, sorry, I just got married like a year ago, but
just got there.
it's tough remembering which alter ego I am.
I'm Chad Seal. I am the one that she forgets that she's married to. So yeah.
Okay, and today we are having a gun talk, which I brought the best people I know, like the specialists on the topic, because they seem to have a lot of guns. Chad's a cop, right, Chad?
Yeah.
Technically.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Okay. He's been through some kind of cop training that I know of.
Yes.
They both work with security,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They work in private security. And yeah, they got guns and they grew up around guns. So I'm going to start there. Just to say, first of all, that Melody and I have been friends for about 5 years now. She was one of my bridesmaids. And then I was her bridesmaids kind of
Yeah.
in her wedding
Yeah.
because she didn't really have.
I didn't really have
brides.
bridesmaids. I had honorary.
Yeah, honorary
bridesmaids.
and like bridegrooms or something like that.
Yeah.
What was it?
Bridesmen.
Yeah, men.
Yes, I
That
had
was
some
great.
of those.
Because she has 7 brothers. so,
Oh, yeah.
and Chad is original from Oklahoma. And how many siblings do you have?
I only have a sister.
A sister. I
Yep.
didn't know that. I thought you
Yep.
had more. I'm only a child, so anything more than one is a lot to me. And what else, Chad? And like I said, you have some cop training.
Mhm.
Let's start with Chad then. A little bit more about his upbringing.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, like you said. My
Let's pause real quick until the dog stops drinking the water. There we go.
There we go. So I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up around guns, what we call out in the country, which is, the rural areas. And I was taught to shoot when I was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old. My dad bought me a BB gun, taught me how to shoot cans off the fence posts, that kind of thing. And then I upgraded to a 22 rifle, which is a little bitty small bullet. And then from there just kind of went up and grew up hunting all my life. Just grew up with guns. I wasn't involved hardly at all with the tactical nature of guns that you see now kind of on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. But then when I went and moved down to Fort Worth for college, after about a year in college, I started working at at security for this campus. And I actually didn't have a gun the first year that I was there. My sole job was to lock all the doors on campus. That's all I did. Every night, just locked all the doors on campus.
Noble task,
Yes.
sir.
The doorman.
Yes.
Yes. And so I wasn't able to carry a gun at that point, but I was still able to get all the training involved with it, just wasn't able to carry a gun. And then after a year of doing that, I moved into a different role within the security department under their patrol division, and was able to then carry a gun and go through different classes and all these different courses with like rifles and shotguns and things. And then after a few years of doing that, I went to the police academy and got a ton more training on all different kinds of things, including guns. And I've been doing that for a few years. And so
it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Yes.
And you never shot any?
Again, I can neither confirm.
Okay.
No. I don't even think I've ever pulled my gun on anybody. No, that is a lie. I have. But no, I've never shot anybody. No. And very rarely do even police officers shoot people. So in their career, most police officers statistically will never discharge their firearm, even accidentally. So
probably because they have training, so that helps.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yes.
Accidents.
Right.
Okay, Mel, go and tell us a little bit about your upbringing. And it's a girl who has guns and was raised amongst guns and stuff. So let us know.
Oh, yeah. So I also grew up in the rural country. My family has about 68 acres of land, which really helps out with shooting because you have to have a certain amount of land to be able to shoot. I don't exactly know what the qualifications are, but you can't be in the city, obviously, and you have to have a few acres or something like that. Otherwise, it's not allowed. So we could shoot as much as we wanted because we had enough acreage. And so it was great. We could pick any spot on the property, basically, and we were good to go. And, I just my family enjoys guns, and it was kind of like something we used to connect with people. We would have people over just to shoot,
just shoot them.
just to shoot them. It was so
that is a joke. Yeah. I want to leave that very clear.
We had people over to shoot with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We love to share guns with people in that, just sharing the experience of shooting guns. On our 4th of July parties growing up, that was a big part of it. We would, eat obviously and shoot fireworks, but also shoot some guns as well with people. One of my earliest memories of shooting a gun, it wasn't the first time I shot a gun, for sure, but I was 6 or 7. And it was 4th of July, and, there was a whole group of guys down the hill shooting guns. And I was like, I want to go shoot a gun too. So I walk over there, and they had some kind of rifle set up with a scope. And I was like, I want to shoot the gun. So under the supervision of my dad and everything, we got all set up. The gun was propped up on the table, and I'm lining up the target, and I pressed the trigger, and this gun had a little bit of kick for a 6 or 7-year-old, and that little
the eyeglass.
The eyeglass. I was like, what is it called again? The scope. Thank you. It's I just said it. The scope hit me right in the eye. Oh, no. It hit and I was a prideful little girl, I was I can't show any weakness, I didn't feel anything. So hits me in the eye, and then I'm kind of like, stars and angels, and I'm like, I'm fine, and I kind of stumble off, and the next day I have like this big purple like black eye now. So like that was one of my like, I know I shot before that, but that's one of my most clear first memories of shooting a gun. Was the time when I gave myself a black eye. So yeah, I just, grew up with guns, grew up shooting guns with people. It was kind of a social activity. And then I also went to the same college as Chad, and also started working at the same security department, and was carrying a gun at some point as well. So kind of got introduced to the security world through that, and also was getting my music degree as well. And right now I'm no longer at the college, but I'm still doing security work, still, carry a gun for the job, all that jazz. I don't know. Did that cover it?
Yeah, no, totally. I think I would go into the part of like education in the house. So that's a big question that always comes up is, oh my gosh, you have children in the house. What if your kid goes and like takes your gun and shoots themselves or shoots someone? It's a big deal. Mostly in Brazil, I'm always going to be making the comparison to Brazil because we don't really have access to guns. Now it's starting to open up a little more, like to the point that you can have it in your house. But I don't know how you can carry in the street. I don't know the rules. But here, what brought up mostly this debate is that recently in Texas, we have even more opening, right, about guns, less regulation. And we're going to get there. But starting with the whole thing in the house, how did your all's parents deal with that? Like, I have kids and I have guns laying around. Were they always loaded? Were they, did they have like talks with y'all and stuff like that? And was there ever any kind of like close to an accident, close to danger because children were around the guns?
So for me, to answer your last question first, no, there was never any accidents or any issues with having guns around the house. I also, I think I might have grown up a little bit different than Melody. So like guns around my house were never just lying around; they were always put up. And my dad, so again, my dad taught me how to shoot when I was like 3 with a little BB gun, which I don't even know if it can kill a person at all.
You would have to have a lot of, it would take a lot of
work. I'm trying to think like if
Maybe
it goes through the eye, but even
like
then
really close range right through the eye, like right here, there's the barrel, there's
but
the
even
eye.
then maybe not.
Maybe
So
not.
so something very
blind you.
something very unlethal.
Yeah.
But even with that, when I was 3, my dad instilled in me, you cannot take this, you cannot shoot this unless I am with you. And so for like the first year or two, he had to be with me. And then at some point, I graduated to, I can use it as long as as long as I ask first, like, can I take my gun out or whatever? Right. And then after a few years of not, blowing up the propane tank or anything like that, I graduated even further to just being able to use it. And then at that point, I think when I was about 6 or 7, he showed me how to shoot a 22, which is an actual bullet, can actually kill people, and it's a legitimate gun.
It's a handgun?
No, this one was a rifle.
Okay. So
I didn't grow up with what you'd commonly think of as like a handgun, which are technically semi-automatic pistols. So they have the slide on the top that goes back and forth. I grew up with revolvers and shotguns and rifles, like hunting rifles.
That's usually what country people have the most, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I grew up with. And funnily enough, I never even shot a semi-automatic pistol until I got to security training at the college. And I remember like we didn't train with them. We immediately went into qualifying with them, meaning, you're taking a test with them. And I had never shot one. So I'm saying, and it was a 40 caliber handgun. And it had a lot more kick than I expected. And so I'm sitting there and, we have to shoot like, 3 shots in like 5 seconds. And I'm like shooting and like, and just like getting worse and worse. And I was like, this is, and it's like, it was an experience. But so anyway, no, I grew up, my dad was like, these are all my guns. If you want to learn how to shoot them, I'll show you how to shoot them. Do not touch them. They, I don't remember if he locked them up or not, but they were in a designated place of they're going to be here, and you don't, you can't even look at them unless you have my supervision, kind of thing. And then other than that, my dad did have a semi-automatic handgun, but that was that was kind of his self-defense thing, and he kept that in his room, and he made sure I knew where that was, and say, don't go near this, don't touch this. This is what it is. And that kind of thing. And then when I got older, to probably when I was about 11 or 12, then, we kind of had a talk of like, look, so for more context, my dad worked the night shift at a factory. And so he was gone, most all the night. So at some point we sat down, he's like, okay, he showed me how to shoot his gun. So I guess I had shot a semi-automatic gun before that, but I don't really remember it. Showed me where everything was, and was like, look, if anything happens while I'm gone, whatever, you're the man of the house, kind of conversation, And I did actually have to use that at one point. It was a joke that was being played on. So a buddy of my dad that he worked with knew that I was there and knew that my dad was at work, and he had gotten off early. My dad's friend did. And he decided, he had to go over there and drop something off for my dad, because he had something in his truck and he had to drop it off at the house. And it was like 3 a.m.
Oh no.
And I'm asleep on the couch in the living room. And I hear, we have a really long driveway, and the headlights wake me up, and I hear this truck, and it's not my dad's truck. And my dad's truck had a very distinctive sound. Like, that's a strange truck. And that my dogs are always, going crazy when cars pull up. So, so they come up, I hear them come up on the porch. I'm like, who is this? And they like start banging on the window, not the door, the window. Yeah. I'm like, that's weird. So go and grab my dad's gun. And then they're like, I can see them trying to like look into the house, whatever. I can't tell who it is. So I go around back and go out our back door and come around the side. How
old are you again?
I think this one I was like 15.
Okay.
I
imagine 11-year-old
Yeah.
Chad.
No, I was like 15 or 16 at this point. And my dad's gun had a little flashlight on it. So I go around the side of the house, and at this point I can see them like looking in and everything or whatever, and that they don't know that I'm there. And so I shine the light on them, and I'm like, hey, whatever. And they turn and look, and I can see who it is. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then have that.
I want to get shot.
I thought you actually like went to the point of shooting. And
no.
Warning shot.
No. I mean, I had to point the gun at them to point the light at them. Yeah. But I don't even know if my finger was on the trigger or anything, because they didn't know I was there. So it wasn't like a huge threat necessarily. Yeah. But they were pretty startled that I had a gun pointed at them. Yeah. And the
lesson for the day: don't prank country people.
No.
Well, the thing was I think when I had this conversation with my dad, or when I told him what happened, I think that I remember him saying that his friend had told him he was going to do that. Uh-huh. And my dad had warned him. Oh my God. And he was like, it'll be fine. So that was the only time I've ever had to do anything like that.
Served its purpose in a sense. Like, there was no accident. You didn't shoot them, and like everything went well, and you were doing what you were taught.
Right.
And still everything went well. Like,
Right.
even if it was, an accident and a prank and all that. So
Right. And
just different.
I think that the principle here is that you teach your children to not like if they're put in this situation that they don't freak out. Because if somebody were to freak out in that position, they could definitely just shoot the person without, because they don't know what to do. They're just like, they're
Hurt
kind of frozen.
themselves, let the gun fall, and
Yeah.
hurt-
That's why, one, you got to be very familiar with the gun and know how it works and that kind of thing. So you're not, one, just stumbling over how to use your gun. But two, you're not freaking out with what you have. And the situation can be very stressful, but I think that's something you can teach people, is to not freak out over those things. But that was my kind of introduction to guns, or at least the responsibility of having guns around the house growing up. And I've only, other than like shooting snakes and stuff, I've never had to really use them other than that time. So
yeah, you want to go for it?
Oh yeah. So I grew up with 10 siblings.
Yeah.
And so tons of kids running around the house all the time. And I would say my parents were pretty good about keeping the guns when we were little, at least. Maybe contrary to what Chad thinks. They were pretty good about not just leaving them laying around, actually. And now that we're older, they leave them laying around. But when we were younger, when you had young kids, the guns were always somewhere in my parents' room. Like, that's what we knew. We're like, okay, dad's got his revolver probably in a sock drawer somewhere. Like, that was kind of our understanding. I don't know if that was true or not, but that's what we all understood. His sock drawer, his underwear drawer, that's where his revolver is at. And then we had he also had rifles, and those were, we didn't really know where those were. I think those were under the bed. But we were kind of trained in the concept of, like, when you're a small kid, you don't get to touch the gun without supervision, so we weren't allowed to go like look for the guns under the bed or touch them. We weren't allowed to go try to find dad's gun in the sock drawer, although we did have the understanding that if there was an emergency, then it's up for grabs. Like, if there's an emergency and you need the sock drawer gun, go get it,
Knowing
yeah.
how to use the gun already, also.
Yeah. Well, and that being said, like, we did have an understanding of the guns, because we would shoot them. But I think that what I would change is I would actually be a little bit more intentional with each child, to sit them down with the gun and train them specifically. Because a lot of us gained knowledge just through watching and then occasionally being allowed to shoot, but there wasn't a lot of like one-on-one instruction with, okay, here's the magazine and this is how you load it, and this is how you chamber around. Okay, we're going to drill this a few times so you really know how to do this. There wasn't a lot of that, and that would have been really helpful, because as a kid, I was always very aware of like the possibility of intruders or the possibility of danger, and I always valued guns growing up because they were a very important like tool and resource. So I always wanted to know how to use a gun. I wanted to know where the gun was, just in case I needed it. And I know there was this one time that I was frustrated that I didn't have all the information that I wanted, because I was probably 11 or 12 or so, and it was just me and my sister. She was like 13 or 14 at that time. It was just me and my sister at home, and I don't know where the rest of my family was, but it was just us at home. We're out, in the boondocks on the country, and it's like 9:00 at night, and this random truck rolls up, which never happens. It never happens that out in the country where we live at 9:00 at night, this random truck rolls up. So, me and my sister see it, and we're freaking out. We're like, we haven't heard about anybody coming. This is a stranger. It's 9:00 at night. There's nobody around, all of our neighbors live far away. So I'm like, okay, I got to get the gun. So I'm like trying to find the gun, and it's like, I'm looking in the sock drawer, I'm looking in the underwear drawer, and I can't really find it. And then on top of that, I'm like, well, I know generally how to use the gun, but I'm not familiar enough. I haven't gone through the drills or enough training to just know that I can load it real quick and chamber around and be ready to go. Like I wasn't confident enough. And so, like I wasn't able to get the gun. I wasn't able to get it loaded in time. I wasn't able to be prepared for what could have been a bad situation. And so I just had to answer the door, and there was, I was defenseless, and it, luckily it was just, I don't know, I forget why the guy came over. It was like it was a middle-aged gentleman, and he could tell that we were super nervous. He was like, look, I'm not trying to worry you, but this is why I'm here. Don't worry about it, and it was fine and everything. But that was one of those things I remember as a kid thinking, like, I want to know where the gun is. I want to know how to use the gun, because if that ever happens again, and if it is a bad situation, like there was no way that, I mean, we would have been in a bad spot,
That was the only situation of like ever going after the gun, and there was never any situation with your siblings or you in a bad situation that one of the siblings took the gun or someone got maybe hurt or almost hurt or something.
Yeah,
like that?
so there was like, as kids, we all had a really good understanding of the boundaries with guns, and none of us ever felt the need to test those boundaries. We grew up with the respect of guns and the fact that you do not touch them without parental supervision, and we were not going to test that line, so we never did. However, I do have a Down syndrome brother, and like he didn't understand the rules of guns like all of us did growing up. He just doesn't understand that. And there was one day where I like look out the window, and there's my Down syndrome brother holding a rifle. And we're like, what the heck? We're like, mom, you just got the rifle. And anyway, it was like one of those kind of scary moments, because I guess, I don't know how, because we didn't even know where the rifles were. We never went to look for them, but I don't know, maybe he was playing underneath the bed that day. I'm not sure exactly how he got a hold of it, but he found it and he was just playing around with it, and it was unloaded and everything. It wasn't like dangerous per se, but still, it's not like you still don't want that situation. Ultimately,
that's good to know. I didn't know. I thought it was loaded. Like I've heard the phrase before of like an unloaded gun is like a piece of paper. It's like nothing. It can do anything. It can't do anything, which I don't fully agree with, because in the case that you were trying to find the gun to like receive the gentleman on your door, and it's just you and your sister. And like, if it were to be a bad guy and it's just the two of you, just the fact that you show a gun, even if it's unloaded, might have saved you, we've heard stories like that for sure. Or even of people mentioning, go get the gun, and the bad guy hears it and they run away because the fear of having a gun in the house, of being against a gun. Nobody's going to want to do that. Okay, so now that we've gotten the background of y'all's lives, how about, why would y'all defend then the right to have guns? This is a very like crazy out there concept, mostly for Brazilians, because because we don't have that access, and we are actually taught that guns are evil, guns kill. I feel like there's almost a sense of, no, guns protect life for y'all more than guns kill, right? Guns murder. And that's what we have in our minds. It's almost like a sin, almost like wrong to have a gun or to shoot or to defend, or like if you accidentally kill someone or you kill someone or hurt someone with a gun trying to protect your family. I can see that going very badly in Brazil. I know that here too, there's several, severe consequences if you don't wisely use a gun and all of that. Even if you're wise, you can still go through a lot of trouble. So talk a little bit about, the right to bear arms.
Go for it, Chad.
You go
Take it
first.
away.
Okay. Well, you start because I'm gonna look up the second.
The
Second
actual quote. He's gonna quote
Oh,
the
okay. Well, man, he's gonna make everything that I say look bad because it's all technical and correct. And okay, so the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I say it wrong?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you said it right. I don't know. So trying to think I mean, that's a big topic, Jessica. Is there anything like specifically you want to?
Why should you have the right to bear a gun?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the right to bear arms is kind of rooted in the intrinsic concept that we need to be able to protect ourselves. You know, as human beings, we have the right to protect ourselves. And it's a little bit more specific than that. We actually have a right to protect ourselves with the best tools available to us. So that's where the right to bear arms is actually, this is the right to have weapons that are effective to protect yourselves. And so that comes from, this idea that the founding fathers had, that everybody has that right. It's an intrinsic human right that you should be able to protect yourself with the best equipment available to you.
So people don't have another one that is like more another person wouldn't be more equipped than you are and have the right, because I that's what I usually tell people. Well, if you think people who don't want to follow who want to kill and do wrong things with a gun will not follow the rules no matter what they are. So if you put a bunch of rules, that's just putting away from, taking away from the people who are actually trying to do things right. So I'm gonna pass this chat. What did you read?
Okay. Okay. Well, if you want the I guess the governmental quote for the Second Amendment. So we have a right to a well-regulated militia, being necessary to keep the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, to understand,
I had no idea it was that long with like details.
So to understand that amendment, you have to understand what the purpose of the Constitution is. And the founding fathers of the United States, they were making a new nation, and they were specifically in their minds, they had just gotten away from a tyrannical government, being England, and this was a government that basically imposed laws and taxes and regulations on them without giving them any representation in the parliament, without them having any say on anything, and it was completely tyrannical, and they, quote unquote, bulldozed them. And these philosophers and thinkers of the time, political thinkers of the time, really took to heart the fact that we as a nation are going to create a free and liberated liberty within our nation. And to do that, we're going to give the citizens freedom from the government's oversight. And so if you go and look at all of their writings, you kind of understand that where they're coming from is what would be, I guess now politically, a more libertarian mindset, or at least closer to that side, where you have a smaller government that has limited oversight over the citizens and the states, and you have a freer people. Now, what that means is you have to understand the Second Amendment completely. You have to also understand that that means the people have the right to be able to overthrow the government. Meaning, if the government oversteps its bounds and becomes tyrannical and starts to oppress its people, the people should have the right to overthrow the government. Now, how does that happen? Well, you have to have the firepower that the government has. Meaning, back then you had, muskets and bayonets, right? So if you own muskets and bayonets and cannons, then you had the same firepower as the military. Nowadays,
That's
we
not
don't.
possible.
It's not possible, right? So if that
I don't know. I'm working on my nuke in the background.
yeah,
I'm getting there,
So,
oh my gosh, I'm totally gonna be banned.
but you look at if you look at the all of our amendments and the freedoms that we have that are from the mindset of the founding fathers, these are not the government giving its people freedoms. These freedoms are God-given freedoms in order for people to have liberty and complete freedom and autonomy. These are the things that they are given and allowed that the government cannot infringe upon. And it has to be that way for them to be completely free of governmental tyranny. And you'll never be completely free of that, but to mitigate it. Now, to the guns point, again, you have to be able to overthrow your government, and it's not a way to say you will overthrow your government. It's a way to say we're keeping the government in check. They're not going to go over bounds and things like that. Because if you look at Hitler and Stalin and even modern tyrannical governments.
Oh, they did in Brazil too.
In Brazil.
Right.
Well, I mean, depending on who you ask, there are
Cuba, Venezuela, Argentina.
Depending on who you ask, the United States is a tyrannical government, things like that. But something that almost everyone can agree on, like Hitler, Stalin, things like that. What they did is they went through and they took away each individual freedom that those people had. I don't know what they started with, but one of them was guns. Then you had your freedom of speech taken away, your freedom of the press. Well, guess what? Now that you don't have freedom of the press, they can print anything they want. Government, the state can, and so now any bit of your news is tailored to whatever they want you to think, and now they can change your viewpoints on things because you're not well informed. Take away your gun so you can't fight back when they kick down your door asking where all the Jews are at. And you're essentially helpless. You're at the mercy of your own government. And so in a place like Brazil, where people are afraid of guns, is what it sounds like from you talking about. I've never been there.
Will. I'll take them.
Yes, one day.
Yes.
One day. In a place like Brazil, you have what's called democracy, right? Where the government rules the people. But what are y'all to do if the government says, you know what? No, we're going to force, I don't know, anything you want to say. We're going to force people to go into concentration camps. What are they going to do? Call the police?
Probably the police will be used to
exactly. Guess who the police work for? They work for the state, right? Are they gonna get on Twitter and and ask for someone else to come in and help them that may or may not, so you're at the mercy of your own government, even if the government is a benevolent one. So this kind of makes me think of like George Washington, right? So George Washington was he was the general of the Revolutionary Army that fought in the Revolutionary War, and actually I think it was the Continental Army is what it was called. But he fought in the Revolutionary War, and he's one of the most accredited people, not just from his actions, but because of just what type of person he was, and very humble guy, but a very good military leader, a very good representation of a man, things like that. And he was begged by the country after the war, once we got our government put in place, to be the president. And he reluctantly actually decided to go through with that. He became the president, excuse me. And
he was the first American president.
He was the first technical American president. And this is a guy that is so well liked and so benevolent, you could say, that people would probably be okay giving him the keys to the kingdom as far as the government goes, right? To say, you can do whatever you want, we'll follow you wherever you go. But he had the foresight to say, whatever power you give me is going to be taken up by my successor, who may not be as benevolent as me. And so he limited what he would do. So he only did 2 terms. And whenever they were making the government, and specifically the powers of the presidential branch, they limited those things and stuff like that. So so you have to look at it also, where you'll have these revolutions in like France and Cuba and different places, Venezuela. You'll have these people who try to, who actually may succeed in overthrowing the government, and whoever led them there may be a great person. But if you give them all the powers in the world, well, then a generation later, those same powers are going to be used to, do the same thing that, led to the revolution. So, so that's why you have to have the standard of freedom and liberty among the citizens, because otherwise the government is going to continue to gain ground. And that's what we've seen, is we've gone from the small limited government, and then in the 1900s, it kind of, especially after World War II, really picked up to where they're just encroaching more and more and more and more and more. And now, there's no, I mean, if you look at our potential to overthrow the government, it's not very high, when you look at what all the military has, right? Because we're not allowed to have a automatic.
Tanks. We're not allowed to have tanks.
No, well, seriously, we're not allowed to have anything.
I want to get
And
into the regulations.
And that sounds crazy to some people. Why would you need a tank? And that's really the answer, is because of tyrannical governments. And we live in an age where people are so comfortable, for the most part, that they're like, that is ridiculous. I would, that would never happen, but then you're seeing that more and more, especially.
You just look at history.
Well, especially now during COVID, you see all these, restrictions and stuff, and people really don't have freedoms to do what they choose to do, and it can lead to a bad place. And yeah, you look at history, I mean, that's how it goes. And so if you're going to have a safe and free country, you have to allow people to have firearms, because firearms exist, and governments and militaries, they have them. So you have to also allow the citizens to have them.
Yeah. So. Before we go into regulations, I just want to say that the government, obviously, tyrannical overreach was a large part of why that amendment was written in there, the Second Amendment. But also, it doesn't just apply to government. Government is just one possible threat. You also have your local neighborhood mafia, could be another one. It could just be your neighbor, your crazy neighbor down the street. It could be a stalker. It could be a foreign invasion. I mean, you have all kinds of potential threats out there that might have more firepower than you, that you need to be able to compete with on a day-to-day basis in order to ensure your survival and your success. So that's really important. I think that, like, the analogy I think of is like the Colosseum. So everybody knows about the Colosseum, you like where gladiators would fight, right? Or so the Colosseum was used for like that kind of entertainment. You had the gladiators who were typically fully armed. They had armor on, they had weapons and tools in order to fight each other. But then you also had the people who were sent in to basically be executed. Those were the criminals, the traitors, the Jews, the Christians, of that time. Those were the people who were enemies of the state. And those people were sent in oftentimes naked, with no weapons at all. And the point is that this was just an execution for them. And so they would go into that ring and they would go up against people who had weapons and had armor. And they were just there to get killed, and the idea is that what are they going to do? They're defenseless. They don't have the same equipment and the same tools as the other people. So of course they're just going to die, And so that's the point, is that in life, we all are in a coliseum of a kind. We all, you have these gladiators over here, maybe it's the government over here, and they've got all their weapons. And then you've got, over here, you've got maybe the beasts or the animals in the coliseum, and they've got their claws and their teeth, and that's their weapon. You do not want to be the person in the coliseum that has nothing, because you're just gonna die. Like when you go up against someone who has more tools and weapons than you, your chances of survival go down to almost zero. And that's not a place that you want to be in. And for somebody like the government or somebody else to say, sorry, you don't get to have weapons. You don't get to have those things that would help you protect yourself against other people or give you even a chance of fighting. Like, that's a big deal,
Well, I mean, you just have to look as far as the last couple months with the Afghanistan issue. Why was the Taliban able to come in, just range free and take over Kabul? Because the citizens weren't armed, right? I mean, that's not the only reason, but had they been armed,
one of their first action, I'm pretty sure, was disarm the entire country or something like that.
I don't even know if the country was armed before that. I actually, that they could have been, but I wouldn't think so.
I want to tell a story from when I was younger. I remember, clearly in my mind, being in school, not even middle school, elementary school. I was maybe 5 or 6, and we had I don't know the word for that in here. I don't think y'all have that, but it's when the entire nation is called to vote and it's majority, and it's on a topic.
Yeah, I don't think
and you vote in one topic. We call plebiscito. And then we did that, above, I think 16 or 18 years old, voted for, are we gonna completely forbid guns, or are we going to allow citizens to have guns? And the majority voted yes to prohibit guns. Of course, there's a major work of the media. I remember the advertisements. I remember being convinced, not having, forbid people, less guns, less crime, less killing, less violence, just take away the guns. And then in school, after the the voting happened and no guns won, we went to school and brought all of our toys that resemble any kind of gun. I'm pretty sure even swords. and and we threw them on the courtyard or the basketball court, and we stumped them. Everybody had to step on them and yay, celebrating. A bunch of little kids and the teachers celebrating that guns were forbidden in Brazil now.
And what is that teaching your kids? The guns are bad.
Yes,
they should be destroyed.
Right.
But what the argument that we're making is that guns are inherently good, and well, I wouldn't say inherently good. Yeah. They're only as good as the person wielding them.
They're a tool.
So I want to actually read a quote on that point, and this is by Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper of the United States Marine Corps. It says a rifle is a weapon. Let there be no mistake about that. It is a tool of power and thus dependent completely upon the moral stature of the user. It is equally useful in securing meat for the table, destroying a group of enemies on the battlefield, and resisting tyranny. In fact, it is the only means of resisting tyranny, since citizenry armed with rifles simply cannot be tyrannized.
Hurrah.
And I mean, he's completely right. Yes, it is a tool. You can use it to hunt with, right? But it is the only means to resist tyranny, because your government, they have guns, and if they just walk in your door with guns, what are you going to do? Grab your kitchen knife? It's not going to go very far, you know.
No, we're taught to not react in Brazil. That's another thing I tell Shane, and he gets, baby, you can come in here and participate if you want. Yeah. But I told him before that in Brazil, you're taught that if you are in a mugging situation, or, you know, we call it assault, but when they go in the bus and everybody's just like, there's 30 people in the bus and a guy comes in, even if he's not really armed, he just says, like, give me your stuff. And because he's using a violence and he might have a gun, even though it's illegal, but he's a criminal, so he doesn't care. He takes away all the phones, all the money, all the wallets, everything. And sometimes is violent against women in a sexual way inside of a bus. And that happens a lot. Like, that is, you know, recurrent. And everybody is taught to never react. Just give it away.
And imagine if guns were legalized and commonplace in Brazil, and that same guy went into that bus.
He wouldn't.
He wouldn't, right? Because there's a potential that other people have guns, right? But he goes in there knowing no one has a gun.
Like, that does not happen here.
No, it doesn't.
Like,
and so there's legitimately a reason why even just within the US, the cities and states that have the highest regulation of guns, meaning you can't really have them, are also the cities and states that have the highest gun violence.
That's what I was going to point out real quick. Brazil ended up, we have more killing, more murder by guns, by firearms, than Syria does every year. And Syria is on civil war, failed state, whatever. Like, they're really in a really bad place. And Syria, not Syria. And yeah, Syria is in a really bad place, but Brazil has more killing, even like percentile, if you compare it, because Syria has less people than Brazil, so maybe you have more because more people. No, but if you compare like percentage wise, I don't know how they do it. Statistically, Brazil has more killing by firearms, even though firearms are illegal to bear, because again, those who are looking to do evil with it don't care about the rules. And then that's where we got with the whole protection against guns.
And guns, so you have this thing called mutually assured destruction with nations. So like the reason that the United States and Russia didn't blow each other up with nuclear bombs in the Cold War was because they both had nuclear bombs, and there was a thing called mutually assured destruction. If you shoot nukes at me, I'm going to shoot nukes at you, and neither one of us are surviving. Well, on a very small level, that's the way guns work between people. Where if I have a gun and you have a gun, then we're probably not going to mess with each other, right? We may get upset and angry, but you know, there's kind of that mutually assured destruction, unless you know you're faster draw than me, which you can find out if you want. But you know what I'm saying. But there's still that level of it. So that mutually assured destruction is what keeps the guy from going in on the bus and, you know, getting all the money and raping a girl, right? And
that's
okay. But that's also what keeps gun violence down, you know, so
you were gonna say something?
Okay. No.
I was just gonna mention that. Oh my god. Okay, so the latest comment I had just yesterday with a friend talking was that, is it true that in Texas y'all just have this new regulation that anyone can have guns, whatever they want, conceal, non-conceal? It's like completely crazy. It's gonna, come and take it. And and I didn't know how to answer all of it because I'm like, I don't know the exact regulation. I didn't even know that people are actually very free about guns even before this new regulation, apparently, right? That you can have guns, like you don't need a license. I even asked Melody on the preview video, like, you need a license to drive a car. Why don't you need a license to have a gun? You know, and I'm gonna let her respond again. But also this new regulation, what is it about? And why do y'all think that maybe, is that good? Is it better? What do y'all think?
So the new law that she's talking about was passed by the Texas court earlier this year, but it went into effect September 1st. It's called Constitution Carry. It just says that you don't have to have a license to carry a gun. But there's still regulations that are in place regardless with that. You still have to be 21 to carry a gun around. You can't be a felon. You can't be, I mean, there's a lot of things. You can't be like a illegal alien. Well, you're not technically an illegal alien. Anyway, there's still regulations. Let's say you like, it's not completely a free for all. There are still regulations. There's certain areas that you're not allowed to carry on, like government property, for example. Theaters, I think, is one of them. Schools, you know. So, well, no, I take back theaters. It's not theaters. You can carry in theaters, maybe. And then obviously, like private businesses, they can still put up like 30-aught signs, which are basically like signs that say, us as a business say that you are not allowed on our property to carry a gun. Yeah. So you still have to abide by those rules. So all that to say, it is a little bit more freeing in that now you don't have to go through the process of acquiring a license after 21 to carry around a gun, but there are still, you know, rules and regulations in place. What
you told me though is that you didn't really need that before. Like you never had to get a license to carry a gun. Or just to own a gun.
To own a gun.
That's the big difference. Because when we think about like owning guns, at least from a Brazilian mindset, it's like, oh, you're gonna have a gun. We don't separate like it's gonna be concealed, non-concealed. It's gonna be in your house. It's gonna be a shotgun or a revolver or a handgun. Like we don't think about any of this. We just think of everybody carrying guns everywhere, and if you fight in the middle of traffic, you're gonna shoot each other, and it's gonna be like the Old West, you know, whoever's the fastest drawer.
But even the Old West wasn't like that.
I know, exactly. When it was more free, it wasn't like that. Right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So there you're right. There's a lot of different facets when you really start to break it down of regulations. Like, for example, with a rifle, you don't have to have a license at all, or never had to have a license to carry around a rifle in public. And you could do that at 18 with a rifle. Whereas with a handgun, you had to be 21 and you had to have a license to carry it around. But with a rifle, you don't. So there's weird stuff like that. With a shot, it's a same as a rifle. Yeah. So like there's weird little laws like that. And then you can own a gun at like 18 in the house. Like you don't have to have any license at all. You can just own it, and you can have it in your car as long as it's concealed.
Which is also something I don't really understand, because if it's like, if I'm going to approach someone that might have a gun, I rather know that I rather see the gun so I'm prepared than like, haha, it's concealed. Like, you just, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think it has to, I'm not sure.
Does it have to do with like the sense of panic that people might have just from seeing a gun?
I think it probably has to do with the fact that Texas wasn't allowed to open carry until recently. You know, and that was only passed a couple years ago. Open carry was. So before that, you just aren't allowed to be in public with your gun shown. So if you're in public and someone looks into your car and they see a gun, then I think it kind of conflicts with that, you know, concealed carry law, I would guess.
Yeah. So I think since the 80s, my legal knowledge isn't complete, but I think since the 80s, you could buy a shotgun or a rifle when you're 18 anywhere. And this is federally. anywhere in the U.S. States may be able to restrict that, but at least here in Texas, you could buy a shotgun or rifle when you're 18 or a handgun when you're 21. Now, the laws as it pertains to what was passed is your ability to carry. So whether or not you could, so you've always been able to carry around a rifle, and I think the idea behind that is because it's harder to conceal, so everyone can see that you have it. And then they had laws about concealed carrying, and then you had to have a license to carry for that. Well, at first you had to have a concealed carry license, and then when they allowed you to open carry, and the idea behind why you could open carry is because you can carry with a concealed carry license, you can carry a gun, but it cannot be seen. Like it can't be printed. Printed means like it's under your clothes, but you can see the outline of it.
Oh my gosh,
right?
it goes down to that level
Yes,
of
it's called
detail.
printed.
Wow.
So, or anything like that. And
which, guys, I've gone dancing with Melody or her brothers so many times. And I'm like, okay, let's dance. And the moment like we hold each other to dance, I feel the gun. And I'm like, it's hilarious.
is that a gun or you just happen
Yeah,
to see
right
me?
now. Right?
Well,
Yeah, I can
maybe.
be her gun.
Maybe.
So, so there were a lot of issues where, people would be in the grocery store or whatever, and then, they'd get in trouble because they would bend over to pick something up and you could, see the gun or the gun was printing, things like that. So, and there was probably other reasons behind this too, but then they allowed for what's called open carrying, which means you can just carry out in the open, and, so then they switched it from concealed carry to license to carry, LTC. And now they've passed colloquially, I don't know that word.
In the colloquial way.
Thank you. My vocabulary goes past my ability to talk. So commonly,
Also, your battery's getting pretty low.
Oh, yeah,
just so you know.
so commonly it's called constitutional carry, which means that you don't have to have a license. It's kind of a farce because it's not actually constitutional.
Yeah, not
because
actually.
if you remember when I read Second Amendment just a while ago, it says that those rights shall not be infringed. That means nothing. You cannot tell me I can't own a gun, basically. And whether I'm 18, whether I'm 21, whatever, whether I'm concealed carrying, whatever. So
that would be an answer even for the whole to have a car or to not to own a car. I think so too, but to drive around you need a license. So why don't you need a license to carry a gun? Your answer was really good.
Well, so that's complicated because some people would argue that you shouldn't have to have a license to drive a car.
That would be really cool.
So like there's people that argue that, and they're like, there shouldn't be any regulations at all, and that's a topic for another time. But I think that like what my answer will be is that the car rights aside, we can argue about what car rights are, but what we do know, as we talked about with the Second Amendment and how the forefathers put such an emphasis on our right and the necessity to be able to bear arms and that not being infringed upon, and how that is essential for us to be able to protect ourselves, our families, to be able to have success in seeking out life, liberty, and happiness. It's important that that is maintained, and so for us, at least, like growing up here, the idea of having a gun was like just a basic right. It's like a God-given like human right, and so because that is something that you need, you have to have in order to like ensure your success and even just your basic protection. And so even more than driving a car or transportation, just being able to protect yourself, being able to ensure your safety is even more of a basic human right that needs to be preserved, needs to be protected. So
and there's also an international aspect to this as well. Like as a leader of a country, you should want your citizens armed, because especially if you're a smaller country, because then if someone tries to overtake your country, well, now they're going to have to go through all of your citizens, not just your military, right? I think there was a Japanese military leader when they were discussing the topic of invading the U.S. that said, well, we can't invade the U.S. because there'd be a gun behind every grass blade, you know. So there's that aspect as well, where it's like, well, if we're going to have to fight, you know, not only a standing army of, you know, 5 million, you know, military members, we're also going to have to fight, you know, 300 plus million Americans. Well, that's going to be a little daunting, isn't it? So it makes it a lot harder. And then if you actually do go in and you're able to take over or establish bases, then you have issues where you the people are fighting back, you know, in a guerrilla warfare style, which is how the Taliban works, you know, and why we've had so many issues in the Middle East. But it's that same idea. It makes it much more difficult to you know. So So as a leader of a country, there's that interest as well. But why would you, as a leader of a country, want to take away the rights of people to own guns?
Well,
for your own power, right? Because then you can control them better. And you can say all day long it's because, oh well, we don't want, you know, some crackhead grabbing a gun and shooting somebody, but that's going to be, you know, that's going to be such a small amount of, and what happens if a crackhead comes out brandishing his gun around other people, and you have the freedom to have guns? Well, someone else is going to pull out their gun, and it's going to, you know, it's going to be dealt with very quickly.
So the problem with that I hear sometimes, not the problem, but the comeback answer to that is, even the person who's doing evil has a soul, and sometimes mostly from religious people. They have a soul, they have a right to life. Who are you to kill them too? Yes, they're doing bad, but it's like human rights. And then how would you respond to that then?
Who are they to try to kill me?
Right. And then but then in countries like mine, it is usually like, no, but that's only the police's job. And even I was told before, like, when a policeman kills someone, even doing his job, he's still committing a sin. Like, he's still wrong, even if he's doing good and protecting someone. I heard that as a child.
Well, that's tough, because then I guess there's a lot of problems that come in with that. You know, that's basically the pacificistic philosophy behind that. And there's a lot of problems, like not only biblically, but just pragmatically. Like, okay, what if your family gets attacked? Are you just supposed to let all of your little children get killed so that you don't kill this person who's trying to kill them? You know, then you have problems, like, biblically speaking, you have Jesus Jesus telling the apostles to, like, arm themselves. You know, they also obviously ran around with swords because one of them cut a guy's ear off. You know, so
He grabbed the Roman guard's sword.
I don't think so. No,
You imagine the story that way?
That's not how I've ever understood it. And then on top of that, you know, David, who was a man after God's own heart, killed a ton of Philistines. A ton. You know, he killed a lot of people.
The whole story,
you know?
starts with him killing Goliath.
Yeah.
With a rock.
So we have
a primitive firearm.
Yeah.
So we have tons of instances throughout, not only through us witnessing godly characters throughout history, but also in the Bible, of people who God even says himself, this is a, you know, person after my own heart, that they're righteous, that they're anointed with the Spirit, and they are killing people. So from that, I think you can deduce that killing someone in and of itself is not wrong. It's what makes it wrong is the reason and the intention behind it.
So it's the difference between the words murder, that I can't probably pronounce it right.
Pretty good.
Murderer.
Murder.
And killing, which is for defense, self-defense, or a defense of your family, or of good people, and with the intention to kill just for your own
with malice and hate.
Malice.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a very different. I don't know. I think God has a very different opinion of somebody who shoots someone else who shoots someone.
Sorry.
What is it?
I'm
What
a
did Cameron say?
liberal, and I think black guns are racist.
Black guns are racist. I agree. We need more diversity in our gun colors.
Absolutely. What is
I'm
wrong with this country?
Yeah. As a Native American, I'm a fan of red guns.
Of course.
And
With the feathers, the red
See,
guns with
we are
feathers.
very
Yeah.
diverse.
But we
here.
can't- we cannot-
I
we-
brought Native American,
Uh-huh.
Latina,
yeah.
and white. And you're
They're all
part
1%
Irish.
Jew, 1% Jew.
Jew? Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, let's not
Yeah.
forget that.
And you have Irish, probably.
Oh yeah. I mean, everybody's got Irish in America.
Yeah.
You
True.
know?
Yeah. But we can't have we can't have white guns because those would oppress all the other guns.
Absolutely.
Oh my god.
This,
Okay,
this
now
is
I'm
going
getting-
downhill.
Now I'm going shadow one for sure. I need a reference for the disciples needing to arm themselves. I think I know the passage you're referring
I got it.
to,
I'll pull it up.
and it's definitely arming themselves with the gospel.
Whatever. That is not true.
Who said that?
That is
Mercy.
mercy.
Mercy's-
Get out of here.
You're not a pastor. I know you think you are.
Yeah, man. The comment stream it's
What's
a
that?
fly.
Hannah said that Peter drew his own sword.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Just imagine.
I know.
Guys,
I think-
put some questions on the screen, okay? You can
Oh
use
no,
it.
don't ask my
Adventures in
family for
Odyssey.
questions. That's like,
Adventures in Odyssey had to be,
oh well, freaking Adventures in
or
Odyssey.
VeggieTales or something.
No
Man,
idea what
yeah,
that is.
probably.
So I'm just looking up the Bible
Yeah.
verse.
So just to go back to regulations real quick,
Yes,
like
please.
why there shouldn't be regulations. This is just an example. So like right now, the regulation is like 21 is kind of like you can't carry around or really own a firearm until you're 20 or the handgun until you're 21. And handguns are really the most versatile gun for self-defense. It's the one that you can carry around with you. It's one of the better ones for like home defense outside of a shotgun. It's just kind of one of the most versatile guns for just basic defense, you know? And so 21 is when you're allowed to have that defense, you know? And the thing is like just speaking from my personal experience, I was at age 15 driving around. I was on my own doing stuff at age 15.
What stuff?
Well, yeah, we won't talk about what that was.
Whatever
you know?
she wanted
Yeah,
to,
that's
'cause
right.
she's a free, independent 21st century
Yeah,
woman.
But like that's like, you know, I guess like 16 was like really when I was like really on my own doing my own like college stuff at 16, but like 15 even before that, like I was being, you know, taking place, like I was doing a lot of stuff more on my own at around 15. And at that point, I would argue is when somebody would definitely need protection, you know, like at the very least, like when you're a female and you're young and you're 15 years old, like you need, like you more than ever need like that kind of access to that kind of protection. But just because I wasn't 21, I didn't get that, you know, I did, that wasn't afforded to me. And I definitely was one of the people in the world that needed it the most because I was small and young and female and on my own, you know? And, but that wasn't, why is that taken away from me just because of my age? I mean, like I knew how to shoot a gun. I was responsible. I wasn't like a crazy child, you know, like I had proved my competency at that point with firearms, but the you know, the law was saying that I couldn't. And I just think that that's, you know, there's a lot of young women out there, you know, who are become victims to crime, and they are not given the tools to be able to protect themselves. And I think that just them being, you know, humans, and they should be allowed to have tools to protect themselves. You know, I think that's essential for them.
So then what about,
Wait, say that again.
Well, I'm just thinking I'm off camera here, but what about everything else? Like voting, like drinking. I mean, everything has age restrictions on things. I think the only solution there, if that's the problem you're presenting, okay, you shouldn't be able to drive until you're 21.
Well,
Because-
you can, but you shouldn't be able to go out into society and be alone. Is really the only way.
Or you just shouldn't,
You should.
if you're worried about that.
Well,
But-
or you could just have a gun and then
But
not
the-
be worried about that. That'd be pretty simple too.
Yeah, but you said you're not a crazy child and you've had an ample training, but that's there need to be some manner to guarantee that for everyone, or it'd be the social norm.
Well, first of all, it was the social norm. Like
Right, and
it
you
has
voluntarily give it up.
well, I don't know how voluntarily, but
I mean,
there
we still
there
live in democracy, so
well we do,
Well,
but
and your freedoms aren't based around the lowest common denominator of society either.
yeah, they shouldn't be. Just
shouldn't
because
be.
there's people out there who abuse it or are stupid doesn't mean that,
but
you
we
know,
still
it-
do have guns.
Right.
I don't think our, and also the follow-up question. You talked about the reason we have guns and whatnot, but what about the society that wants to give them up, like Brazil? Because that's a whole different aspect than the government. Well, that's the perspective, but I mean, you look at America today, and it's a pretty good split on people that are for and against guns. And that's not the government making a law against them. That's the populace of the people saying we
No,
don't want them.
if the people want to give that away, they can. I just think it's stupid. And I
So-
think that they'll suffer the consequences.
So
know?
so here's the thing with that question. The government putting regulations on guns is them depriving the people of their God-given rights. If people, the populace, don't want their guns, they don't have to buy a gun. No one is forcing them to have a gun. But the people who do want guns should still be able to have them because they have the right to do so. But if they collectively, everyone's like, no, we don't want guns in here. We actually want them regulated. They can do that. It's fine. Well, I don't know if it's fine, but they can definitely do that. The only thing is like when the government then comes in, and maybe they won't, but the government then has the potential to completely take away all other freedoms, because there's no like threat of force if they don't, or if they do, you know what I'm saying? So you can take away all the freedoms of having guns and things, as long as you're prepared to also then give the government the freedom to have those and regulate you.
Okay, can you fix that? Put in there.
Mercy, I don't understand your problem with the New Testament passage. I thought it was
No, okay,
I
so I got it.
thought it was pretty
It is. So the New Testament passage, it's from that one comment you read. I think Mercy is talking, getting hung up on the word armed. It doesn't use the word armed.
yeah.
It's in Luke 22, starting in verse 35. It says, and he said to them, he being Jesus, he said to them, when I sent you out with no money bag or knapsack or sandals, did you lack anything? And they said, nothing.